Welcome to Building Boston and Beyond. I am your host, Lydia Rivera. Today, we are launching this unique program to showcase the many projects underway in and around Boston, including the involved companies, government officials, neighborhood associations, local main streets, and community advocacy groups. As we know, it is critically important to engage community participation in decision-making forums relating to the neighborhood projects from start to finish. This is accomplished through inclusion, open dialogue, and sharing of information, thereby creating partnerships, unity, and trust. Building Boston and Beyond will focus on showcasing the many investments underway in Boston and beyond its city limits, such as Logan Airport's rental complex, Liberty Mutual's expansion project, the Green Line extension to Medford, the Fan Piers Vertex headquarters project, the Boston Convention Center expansion, and growth and investments out west in Worcester. Building Boston continues with support from government officials, neighborhood associations, local main streets, and community advocacy groups in and around the city. Construction has gained momentum, enhancing our communities and putting the unemployed back to work. Jobs promote stability and improve spending power, which in turn improves the quality of life for residents. Equally important to growth is preservation of this historic city, which also creates construction and permanent jobs, enriching our neighborhoods. Here with us today to share more about historic preservation is Kathy Corteritas. She is the director of Historic Boston Incorporated, a nonprofit organization that rehabilitates historic and culturally significant properties in Boston's neighborhood. Kathy will discuss partnership building and share some of their successful revitalization efforts and other projects currently underway. Kathy, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so happy you're here. When we talk about preservation, you are the director of HBI, and I'd like to know how long you've been doing that, what challenges you, and your passion to continue with this effort.
Well, yes, Historic Boston Incorporated is a nonprofit, as you said, that rehabilitates historic buildings in the city of Boston, within the municipality, and typically out in the neighborhoods, actually. But we've been doing this for 54 years. Having been founded in 1960 to save the Old Corner Bookstore, which is a building in downtown Crossing, one of the oldest commercial buildings in that neighborhood, 1718, which continues to this day as a fully commercial building. Home to Chipotle, home to Sweet Cupcakes, and a few other places.
Is that the corner of School and
Washington Street? Yep. But in 1960, that was threatened with demolition for a parking garage. In the time of urban renewal, at a period of time where a lot of changes were going on in the city, and a group of Bostonians got together, said no way, purchased the property, found investors, found tenants, and ultimately repositioned the building to be express more of its historic flavor, for sure, but to perform better financially, economically, so that it could continue to survive into the 21st century as we have it today. And yet it is also an official site of the Freedom Trail as well. So to us at Historic Boston, it was that little model there at Downtown Crossing is the thing that inspires us all over the city to carry out similar projects in many, many other places. That's and have wonderful. For 54 years.
That's amazing. Now, let's talk about just what's going on now. Can we talk about some of your preservation projects that you've completed that have been a success?
Well, it's been a busy
Partnership
time.
building, how that works, and what you have on the horizon.
Sure, absolutely. So HBI really started out as much like the Old Corner Bookstore. We were looking to save historic buildings that were threatened by demolition, threatened by neglect, all of those things. And we still keep our eye out for those kinds of properties. But we're very clear today that preservation, as I think it's been proven by many people in other parts of the city, is really part of the city's economic development strategy, that keeping historic buildings in our neighborhoods definitely enhances the economic activity of the neighborhood, the Main Street district, the street that a house may be on, but it also strengthens people's pride in their neighborhood, makes them feel really good about the place in which they live, because they learn more about the history and the evolution of their neighborhood through the revitalization of historic buildings and that sort of thing. So we will always be looking for the endangered building, the one that really is in tough shape. But we are also working closely in collaboration with Main Street districts to identify commercial properties that are simply underutilized, underperforming, and that perhaps by working more closely with owners to help bring those properties to a different level internally, but also externally reflect their historic character, that there's really an opportunity to bring them into a much more aggressive use in the community, places for small business, places for new housing, and really build even greater appreciation
See,
for them.
HBI is significant because it definitely brings the community together and engages the community and builds pride.
Sure.
And
Take, for example, our headquarters, because I think probably it's been a very busy time at HBI over the last few years. But the project that we really hold up there as a great example of what we do is the Eustis Street Firehouse in Dudley Square, which is the city's oldest firehouse structure from 1859, from the time when Roxbury was its own town. And HBI had kept its eye on this building for the better part of 25 to 30 years, and it was in really tough shape. Yes, owned by the city of Boston, but financially very, very challenging for the city to make serious investment in, because the challenges were really, what would you use it for in this day and age? So HBI took another look at it again in 2008 and began putting plans together to utilize state and federal historic tax credits, new markets tax credits, to bring the building back into use again, but really try to figure out the right occupant. And we discovered that we were the right occupant, because the fact was that we were doing most of our work in the outlying neighborhoods of the city, and that a property like that could house us and frankly another nonprofit organization, the Timothy Smith Network, and it could be a place that we bring back into use and demonstrate what we do and be better connected to our neighborhoods. So we made a $2.5 million investment in that property, brought it back from a ever so slightly leaning property back plumb again, and completely revitalized it, doubled the square footage by recreating an addition that had once been on the back of the building and had actually fallen off back in the early 90s. And now we have a wonderful space within which to work, a great community. Dudley Square is a fabulous place to be.
I was just going to say that. You're very lucky to be where you are.
We are. And we also have a place to show people the kind of work that we do and how we do it. And in many respects, we utilize all the tools that any private developer would use. We go to the bank for debt. We go to the state and the federal government for historic tax credits. We utilize our own cash as owner equity. We also have, but I think this is what makes us different, is that we can go to people to ask for support financially. We can get charitable support because the properties that we pick are ones that will give something back to the community, that either through their reactivation or because they're places that people love and would really like to see continue on as an important architectural element in their neighborhood.
Oh, absolutely. And it's exciting to partner with HBI and make an investment.
I'd like to believe it is.
Well, I think it's exciting to be part of the end product.
Sure.
And say, I'm part of that. And I brought back revitalization.
Well, the community was fabulous in helping us to think through what we would do there. They were incredibly supportive of our coming into that community. But it's probably the only public meeting I've ever done in which we actually had applause at the end.
Oh, absolutely.
So I just think that tells you a little bit about how meaningful it is for communities to not only see change and rejuvenation in their neighborhoods through historic preservation, but to see, to be part of it, to actually engage with us in the discussion and the dialogue about how we're going to use the properties, what the work will be, who will do the work, all of those things. And we're always very open about that and really love to have people come along with us on the adventure.
And you're always seeking partners, and I follow you, and I've seen a lot of what you've done in the newspapers. I've seen your ribbon cuttings, and you have some great support. I mean, you have the support. I've seen your ribbon cuttings with the mayor, I've seen your ribbon cuttings with the state representatives, local merchants, influential people that are taking time to invest in something that other people may think is small or insignificant, which it isn't.
Sure.
And right where you are on the firehouse, but the surrounding area, like Dudley Square and the development going there.
Oh, it's been amazing to watch the Ferdinand building come to life as the new school department headquarters. And through the winter months, they've been doing construction on the inside, so the windows are all lit up after dark, and it is just so refreshing to see that property back in action again.
Yeah, you're lucky. You have a cool place to work.
And that area is pretty really fabulous. Cool. But there are many other neighborhoods that we're working in, so even though that's our home now, We have recently completed the Hayden Building in Chinatown, which is an 1875 structure that was built by H.H. Richardson, the same architect who built Trinity Church and many other
really?
wonderful structures. Very famous architect from the late 19th century. And a lot of people didn't know that he designed this little building in Chinatown because it was sort of lost in the middle of the combat zone in the 20th century.
Right.
And obviously that is a very different neighborhood now. Chinatown has pushed out to the edges of Washington Street, and certainly the whole Midtown planning and zoning has really influenced the height of buildings there and the changes along Washington Street. But the Hayden Building was a property we purchased about 20 years ago.
Wow.
Brought it back into structural stability. It had really tough property problems, but we ultimately made those initial investments. And it wasn't until about 2-3 years ago that we decided that we would sell an adjacent property that was not for a preservation project and reinvest those funds into the Hayden Building. So today we have a beautiful structure that has 4 luxury units.
Wow.
Luxury is probably overestimating it, but very nice apartment units upstairs, and a first floor retail space that we will soon announce a tenant for. So we're very delighted with that building, and it feels good not only to preserve the physical structure, which we did almost 20 years ago. We really put it in a place where we could have sold it to somebody else, but we felt very strongly that we needed to finish the job by reactivating it completely and bringing it back into full usability. And for Historic Boston, our model is this, that even though we have now a few properties that we're holding long-term, most of the properties that we acquire, we do so with the intention of making an investment and ultimately selling our interest to a preservation-minded or willing buyer who's willing to care for the property the way that we've cared for it, and then ultimately reinvest the proceeds from those properties into the next project, so that like a developer, we can just keep going.
Exactly.
So that's our model, and properties that we're looking at like that right now are the Alva Kittredge House in Highland Park in Roxbury, a property that we've kept our eye on again for about 35 years. Built in 1836 as a beautiful Greek Revival mansion with these 2-story columns.
That's amazing.
Real stunning place, and a property that was in fact an estate. It was almost like a rural estate when it was built.
Really?
And now the city's grown up around it. So the property fell into disrepair in the last 20 years. It's been vacant and empty, and the city was very instrumental in taking it by eminent domain and giving it to Historic Boston because it had fallen to such blight that it was seriously at risk. And we discovered through our assessments of the building and pre-development that it was seriously at risk financially as well, that we really needed to make a higher level investment than we probably initially thought. But we are converting that property into 5 apartments initially, and after the 5-year tax credit compliance period, we'll probably sell those as individual condominiums. 2 of them will be affordable, both through the rental and the condo sale processes, so permanently. And it's HBI's first foray into affordable housing development, and we're really excited about the opportunity to help build use preservation to achieve other social goals that I think the neighborhood also favors.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you're there in a revitalized effort like that, it just improves the neighborhood and surroundings. May take time.
It's true.
But I really believe it's a trickle effect, and I really believe that what you're doing...
Those are hard to measure, but we are firm believers from our 54 years of experience that it makes all the difference.
Oh, I certainly believe that, because you have this structure that looks so beautiful, and maybe the surrounding community is not there yet. But you see that, and you want to improve your property, you want to maintain it.
Absolutely.
So I think,
so
what
that
else are
one's
you
going to be
doing?
a gem.
Excellent.
The other property that we are currently in construction on is called the Vertulo Building in Hyde Park. Now this one speaks to partnership in a very direct way. Historic Boston launched an initiative about 5 years ago called Historic Neighborhood Centers. We felt very strongly, based on experience, that when we work in concentrated areas and do multiple projects in one neighborhood, we have the best chance of helping to achieve revitalization and really help a neighborhood turn whatever corner it's aiming to turn. And we worked with Boston Main Streets to identify 2 neighborhoods, Fields Corner as one commercial district, and Cleary and Logan Square in Hyde Park as another. And so we have recently gone into construction on the Vertullo building in Hyde Park, which is a building built in 1868, which is the same year that Hyde Park was founded. So it's really
Wow.
one of the few remaining buildings in that commercial district from the very, very beginnings of Hyde Park as a town the way we know it. It's been muddled up over time, which many historic buildings will experience, but it's also been occupied the entire time as well by 5 commercial spaces on the first floor and 4 apartments upstairs. And we acquired this building from the owner who, with her family, has owned the building for the better part of 70 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and she still lives in it. She's one of our tenants now, but she wanted to sell the building, and we are gradually revitalizing it. The first floor we're restoring to its 1890s appearance, the beautiful storefronts that with far more glass than was there before. And it's really, really attractive. I was visiting with the Hyde Park Board of Trade last night, and it was just so heartening to hear their response to seeing the construction underway.
They're overwhelmed, yeah.
Yeah, and we did this in partnership with Hyde Park Main Streets. They helped us to identify the property. We did all the research. We looked at the development scenarios we might undertake, the acquisition strategies and all of that. But they were there with us along the way, a partner with us when we went looking for funding to fill certain gaps on the project. So it has been a
helping
great
you along the way.
partnership because
Yeah.
I think what we've discovered is a really neat partnership that helps bring even more real estate development attention to neighborhood commercial districts. So Main Street will focus on their business development, their marketing of the whole district, and their individual events and such. But we can help partner by bringing our real estate skills and our preservation experience to properties that have a very high profile and can really change the way the district looks and feels without changing the economics. I mean, we certainly work
Exactly,
within
yeah.
the market of that very specific micro area because we'd be crazy not to. I mean,
But this is so
that's
interesting.
what will succeed.
The partnerships is not only just monetary and someone to help you with that. We're just talking, you're bringing in architects and designers,
Yes.
and there's just so many partners.
Yes,
that
we
you
work
have.
with a lot of as you say, architects, designers, engineers,
Historical
contractors.
people that
Oh,
know
yeah.
about historical preservation.
Absolutely,
I mean,
absolutely. We have a limited amount of that on our own staff, but the reality is that we need to bring people in who know how to utilize all these tax credits and what will comply
That's
and
true,
what
too,
won't.
yeah.
But we also find that the initial part of telling the story to communities of the building that has been sitting in front of them for years that they'd never really knew much about, that maybe have been muddled up over time, and you don't really, that they can't see what we probably can see through our research and historic photo archival research and that sort of thing. So it really tells a story that drops jaws in meetings. I mean, people just get so excited about what they see.
Oh, absolutely, and just people take it for granted.
Totally.
I mean, this is Boston, it's historical. I mean, I think without HBR, there'd be a lot of unidentified.
It's true. Well, I think it's
Properties.
true. There's others working at that, but I think it's very hard to tell the story until you actually have a plan to actually, really do a bricks and mortar project. And that's, I think, one of the great things that an organization like ours brings to the table is that we can help to make the case for a property that is lying kind of sleepy in a neighborhood to be brought back to life. And we do it using market forces and a few other extra little tools that we can bring along. And that's what I think sells the community. But it's also something that I think ultimately convinces property owners, who are the ones who have to take the risk,
Right,
to actually do
right.
it. I mean, we understand risk because that's what we're all about. But I think when we approach a property owner and try to encourage them to do something with their building and show them a pretty picture, it's a little bit of a sales job. But we do it in a way that ultimately is bearable.
Now, I know you're doing something on, was it Norfolk area?
Yeah, we're always looking for properties of significance, and people often ask why we pick what we pick. We are looking for properties that are generally 50 years old and older, have some level of cultural or historic or architectural significance, and usually that means that they are eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places. That sounds really complicated, but the reality is if you just call the Landmarks Commission or you call the State Historical Commission, they'll let you know. But we can also take a good hard look at that to see what the eligibility level is. But we're looking for properties that have some meaning within the community, have some degree of economic feasibility. And we're also looking for properties that will have a transformative effect, not just on the property that we're looking at, but the
in the
immediate area,
neighborhood,
so
yes.
that there's likely to be a multiplier effect or a ripple from that investment. So that's what we look for, and it can be any combination of all of those things, but we're always willing to talk about any property in the city that may be of interest to communities. But we are looking at a property called the Fowler Clark Farm, which is really interesting in Mattapan on Norfolk. It is a property that has a house from 1785 and a barn from 1860 that are still in their exact locations. This is another great instance in which this was once farmland in the 18th century, probably even into the 19th century. And it wasn't until the early 20th century that a lot of housing, the triple deckers that line every street in Mattapan between Blue Hill and Norfolk, were built in with very dense 3-decker type of housing. And this property, it's about 30,000 square feet. It's sitting in the middle of a neighborhood and a lot of open space. And yet the family that owns it, or the couple that had lived there for many, many years, the elderly woman who was the last one to live there, has passed away. So it's with the estate, and the estate is trying to figure out the future of the property. And we're keenly interested because it was designated a Boston landmark, which is a very high level of protection. Partly for its architecture. It's a classic 18th century farmhouse.
Yeah.
And but it's also an unusual property to survive in the city, in the urban environment. And Mattapan really is much more of a 20th century neighborhood than folks would think. So this is a really unusual property to survive. So we really would love to be part of the solution there. It's been empty for some time. It's got definitely some condition problems,
sure,
but
yeah.
as any older
But
building
that's the exciting
would.
part of it.
Yeah.
You seek the partnerships.
And unwinding all the difficulties.
Exactly,
So,
and get the people to help you.
Crazy as that may sound, we're really interested in making a go of that one. And I think we've got a lot of people in the neighborhood interested in it, the city's interested in it, and I think we are going to find a solution there. So we're pretty excited about that one.
And you have a vision for it.
Yeah. I mean, it's called a farm because it was one, and even if you drive by, you will pause to say,
What number
there?
is it? Norfolk?
Yeah, 467 I think is the
Well, people
number,
should
but
people should ride by,
right off of
and check
Morton
it out.
Street. Yeah,
Because that will give them an understanding of what you
Absolutely.
do. So you identify the property, seek investors and people to help, revitalize it. It improves the surrounding community.
No
I mean, you
question.
can't get better than that. So I
No
think
question. And it gives, can I tell you, when we opened the firehouse in Dudley Square, I still tell people the story that for probably the first 4 to 6 months, the number of people who would pause, and my office overlooks the street on Eustis Street, the number of people who would just stop and stare at the building like, what is that?
No,
And
it is.
What
It's a
happened
cool
there?
building,
And
yeah.
who are those people? It was a fabulous response.
Right. So we're ready to wrap up.
Oh, my
And
goodness.
it went so quick.
Yes.
There's so much to share, and I know
Oh,
you
there's
have
a lot
actually
more, but
you have more properties to share. And
we'll
I'd
just
love,
come back
love
and
to
tell
have
you
come
about it
back.
later.
So again, thank you for kicking off Building Boston and
Thank
Beyond with me. It was great, and sharing all that HBI has accomplished and continues to undertake relating to historical preservation in the city of Boston. Again, your work is so important, and I will have you back to share more of your projects and what you and your staff pursue.
Thank you.
And thank you to our sponsors, Historic Boston Institute, Codman Square Neighborhood Development Corp., Skanska USA Building, and thank you folks for participating today in the kickoff of Building Boston and Beyond. We have some great guests queued up for the next few months, including transportation leaders, City of Boston officials, community advocates, and of course, contractors who are creating jobs, building Boston and beyond, all eager to share their vision and projects underway. See you next time.